Hey guys, welcome. Thanks for tuning in to National Fire Radio. This is kind of a different one this morning. I'm surrounded by a couple good friends that I've known for quite a long time. And Sid, we're newly friends, but it's fantastic, man. Where we want to go this morning is very much this. You know, we sit in here with a lot of senior men and we talk about the fire service and we try to capture some of their jobs and we talk about what they bring to the fire service and sharing their stories so that the next generation can really get an understanding of their kitchen table and front bumper type talk stories, that through those stories they educate the firefighters. So you don't always have to stretch a line or throw a ladder to be able to educate. And so the storytelling a lot of times is some of the better training that we can get. Unfortunately, we're losing that. And the stories aren't being told as much as they should be or have been. And so for us at National Fire Radio, another way to do that is to have some roundtable discussions with some guys that I respect and friends that have been in the business for quite a while, and we want to talk about a few things. So, good morning, and Joe, can you give us I just want to go around the table, facilitate the conversation. I just want to go around the table and introduce yourselves, and then everybody can get a feeling of who everybody is, so that when we get into it, they know the background and so on. So, Joe, you start.
Whiteclaw Fire Department, Assistant Chief.
Fantastic, brother. How many years you been a fireman now?
A little under 25.
Okay, under 25. So I'm in the same spot, 24 years. So I get it. Officer, Whiteclaw is a proactive department. You guys are a progressive department. And you're like me, I know that you came up through the department and you're well respected, and I'm happy to have you. Thank you for joining us. Tommy?
Mawa Fire Department Assistant Chief, joined the fire service back in '96.
Nice. So another guy with a bunch of years in.
Yeah.
Sid, you?
Yeah, born '96. I'm Sid. I started in 2012 in Stamford, Firehouse,
Connecticut. Yep.
3 years in Bristol, Rhode Island, just about 25 minutes south of Providence, and now I'm out in Homestead, Pennsylvania.
Homestead, and that's outside of Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah,
so
it's
right
on the
western
border
part of the state
of Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Pennsylvania is such a strong volunteer state. You know, it's like, it really is. I mean, there's the career departments dotted around the state, but primarily...
Yeah, majority, especially out that way, is volunteer.
Yeah, strong volunteers with a lot of company pride and a lot of department pride and so on. No? You shaking your head?
I think that it's from one case to the next when it comes to that, yeah. I mean, it's an area that I'm sure, like everybody else is, has its struggles on the volunteer side.
Well, and that's the perfect lead-in, because that's why we're here this morning, right? So partly what we do here when we talk about culture and tradition and capturing the stories of the senior men is I get a lot of response back from guys all over the country that listen to our content and they have mixed emotions about the fire service, younger kids that are having a hard time with senior men that won't listen or have an open mind, and then we have the other end, the senior guys that are complaining about this newer generation, right? And so there seems to be this disconnect, and what I really want to do today with you guys sitting around the table this morning over coffee is really just talk about the current state of affairs maybe in the volunteer fire service and talk about officer and leadership positions and kind of mentoring and so on, because I can share some personal stories. I know myself, I mean, I'm 24 years in, and I'll break the ice this way with you guys, is 24 years in the volunteer fire service, and I have an incredible passion for it. But outside of National Fire Radio, I run my own business. And I have a lot of other obligations, family and so on. So I know that my time has become more limited in the firehouse. And I know that when we have a call, like the other night, drove on a run, got back, put the rig away, cleaned the rig off like we're supposed to do. We do everything we're supposed to do. Years ago, I used to sit on the front bumper and bullshit for the next 20 minutes, half hour, right? Now I'm finding myself running out the door. Like, guys, thanks, good seeing you guys, I'll see you at the next one, and run out the door. And for me, that becomes challenging because I know I'm doing it and it pisses me off, but it's that balance, right? It's that fine balance. So, I mean, I don't know, experiences, thoughts on that? Tommy, you shaking your head?
I agree. I feel the same way. You come, you do what you can, you take off, and you wish you could stay another hour or two.
I know. And it's, and I look at these younger faces, right? And the impressionable guys, right? And I think about, I still consider myself a young guy. I'm 42. I still consider myself like young. I feel like I'm 25, except for the next morning, you know. And then I wake up like Sunday morning, like this morning, man. I didn't want to get out of bed. But here's the deal, right? Like, we have a responsibility, and it's hard in the fire service, especially in the volunteer fire service, where we're not there 24 hours a day, right? We're not assigned to be there at a certain time, and so on. It's hard to draw that line and say that we need to spend that extra time instilling some of those stories and values into our younger guys. And I think what happens is we get some resentment or pushback from the younger guys, and I think that could be part of the disconnect. Sid, maybe you could hit on that. I mean, you're one of those younger guys.
Well, I mean, having gotten the pleasure to move states, to move houses, I've been places there that had that strong culture. They had a lot of guys that wanted to be mentors. They had a lot of guys that they want to spend time, because like you were saying, I mean, your time is capitalized, and everybody has a life, and everybody has a family and a job and so on. And I feel like you can still see it in guys that even are busy, even guys that run out of the door. You can kind of tell, who's in it and who's, into it.
Yeah.
Like that expression goes. So, I mean, that whole running out of the door thing, I get it, especially in departments where, people don't really hang out. Where I am right now, our station's kind of like a big airplane hangar. We had a nice old municipal building, a lot of history, poles, old circular staircases. And then now, not a great day room, not a really warm feeling. So, I mean, I get that to an extent, but...
I mean, I think running out is just the kind of the metaphor for the bigger situation, right? Like, I look at different departments aren't doing the traditional things that we used to do, right? I mean, you guys made some changes, Joe, right? I mean, and it's because our responsibilities of running calls and public safety, and the real reason why we're there is becoming greater and greater, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you don't have the...
Call volumes, doubled since we started.
Right.
When our parents started, because both of our parents were firemen.
Right.
They were running less than 100 calls a year.
Right.
Firehouse was a social place to come and hang out and bring your wives or bring your children, and it was something to do.
Right.
Now, who gets out of work at 4:30 except for me and Tommy?
Right.
Everybody else is working until 6, 7 o'clock at night. Nannies are watching the kid. I mean, the family time is limited.
Right.
And to try to get these younger families to join the fire service, I think is hard. I mean, the junior program for us has been awesome. I mean, we thrive on the junior program.
Is it more family than outsiders on a junior program?
It started off initially family because of our bylaws.
Right.
But we are expanding that out now.
Right.
Friends of friends are starting to come in. You can get them through high school. They get to go through the fire service program. But then after that, they go to college. Some stick around.
Yeah.
We are blessed to have put a lot into the paid service.
Yeah.
We've had a lot that promote on and get the, play
Same
the
here,
major
man.
league.
That's a huge feather in our cap for our organizations is how many guys we get.
But then we lose those guys.
Right.
Some of the cities they join allow them to then move out of the city and take on their own residencies. But a lot of the departments require them to maintain residency in it. So then you lose them forever.
I got 3 guys leaving in the next 60 days.
Yeah.
3 guys. And I don't, in my department, I can't afford to lose 3 guys.
Right.
And we're losing 3 guys. And there's not that next class or fill-in guys to come up the line. Typically you have your generational, every 5 years you get that another 5, 6, 7 guys that are going up the ranks together, right?
I'm not seeing that anymore.
We don't have it.
It's everywhere.
I agree. I agree. And I mean, what we're trying to do here today is really not solve this. We're not going to be able to solve it. What I want to do, though, is explain to the people that listen and so on is that everybody's going through the same stuff.
Right.
I mean, we have to be able to find that fine balance between providing a service that the end user expects and then trying to maintain our own integrity and company pride. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, try not to go into divorce and lose your kids, right? I mean, really. I mean, that's the grandioso thing. I mean, my wife. You guys know my wife. I mean, she's a saint. She deals with me. She deals with me going to the Firehouse still. She deals with me in my job. She deals with me in National Fire Radio. Like, without her, I wouldn't be able to do it. and my kids get it. And I grew up, and Joe, I know you did very much, that my kids grew up in Firehouse. And so they know that my life, my friend circle, it all revolves around the Firehouse.
Yep.
Right.
You know, and I think that's important because that instills some of those values, right? The civic pride, the ownership of it, to take responsibility, and to, you know, I think it's incredibly fulfilling, and I think it's pretty wild that, you know, my kids walk in a Firehouse and every single guy knows their names, and they know every guy, and it's really cool.
Yep.
You know, how do we instill that, and how do we make sure that keeps going? That's the question, right? So, I mean, Joe, we were talking, I mean, you guys, your call volume's up. You know, some things are, you know, your junior service works pretty well, and junior firefighting's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And for you guys, I mean, I think you guys were later to the game on that, if you will.
Right, yeah, because when I joined, they didn't let me join until I was out of college. You know,
Right.
until you could dedicate the time to go to fire school, you know, it wasn't encouraged to join the fire service.
That's wild. Think
Yeah.
about that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, you know, 20-something years ago.
Yeah.
Now, in the last 10, we've empowered the junior program, and it's been cool because a lot of the dads get to, you know, bring their kids up, and, you know, we got a lot of family stuff going on, and,
Yeah.
you know, my son will probably join my last year's chief,
Nice.
so that'll be pretty cool.
Yep. Absolutely. I think it's great. The family lineage is fantastic. Sid, is there lineage by you?
No, I'm completely. I came into it green at 16. I binge watched Rescue Me, and I lived like I was working at a gas station that was sort of on the corner by the Firehouse in Stamford, and I'd seen it on TV and thought, you know,
Just watching it run past every day.
there's something cool to do, and I think, like you guys hit on, whether it's a junior program or training, or, you know, even having guys around to just you know, to just shop talk with, a lot of it is involvement, because like you said, you know, you when you get bit by this, like, it becomes your lifestyle and it becomes part of your identity, and it's hard if your lifestyle is like sitting in an empty firehouse by yourself, you know, hours on end. So really, in my opinion, anything that gets people doing anything other than sitting around is you know, an improvement, because, you know, I hear it from a lot of friends of mine. Oh, you know, I'd come down and hang out, but, you know, nobody's down there, and it's not like we're running 2,000 calls a year, and, you know, you go down to the Firehouse and nobody's there, and you sit there for 6 hours, and the day after, you know, you start to think twice about, like, well, you know, I'll stay home, and if there's a call, then I'll go in. And so, you know, we just took a new delivery of a new engine, and one of my favorite things about it is that the rear bumper is enormous, and it has nothing for me to do with the fire tactic side of it. It's that I noticed that guys hang out more down in the bay now that they have someplace to sit.
I love that.
Because I noticed that like on the front bumper, you can only really sit, you know, 2 guys, and if you don't have a wealth of like station rolly chairs. So it's nice because, you know, it keeps guys from going up to the recliner and kind of isolating, and, you know, but really anything to get involved with. You know.
I love that.
Yeah.
You just like, I'm an apparatus nerd, and we do all that apparatus stuff. So I'm gonna have to hit on that one when we come out by you.
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
talk about that. I think that makes a good point, and you hit on something too that just kind of popped in my head. Tommy, you might be able to relate to this. Is that I find that, you know, because my time is not what it used to be in the Firehouse, and I beat myself up over that, right? But it is life, right? I do find, though, that when a guy like myself that has the years in the Firehouse and, you know, kind of is like on that that echelon that guys like the younger kids look up to, and they talk to you and so on, and I'm in that position, right? What's fun for me, though, is when I do promote something, or I do say, like, hey guys, anybody want to hang out? Like, you know, you want to grab a beer, or, you know, you want to, you know, just a brotherhood type thing or whatever. You'll guys will find time to do it, I think, right, Joe? Right, Tommy? Like,
definitely.
I mean, I can see you being very much the same way too.
Definitely.
Like, hey, I don't have all this time in the world, but the time that I do have, if I can make it valuable, and I think for myself, like, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm doing tomorrow night for our Firehouse, I'm doing a Brotherhood dinner, and I started this 4 or 5 years ago.
Did you get your invite?
No.
I didn't get my invite.
No, this
Did you get an
is
invite?
a closed party. We don't invite the riffraff from the outside in. This is no, but what it is here. So here's the deal. I'll explain.
I'm a little jealous.
So, well, then come. You know what? Come. Open invite. I'll put it out there. National Fire. Anybody wants to come to this thing tomorrow night? It's in Wyckoff, New Jersey. Anyway, so listen. So here's the thing, right? So years ago, my Firehouse, we're one department, 2 stations, 1 department, right? So we're not separate companies. We're just 2 stations, right? Because of the makeup of the town and the distance. And so headquarters has everything going on. I'm in the substation across town, right, if you will. Right, nice firehouse, don't get me wrong. But it was always built when it was built in the 60s or 70s. I think it was like late 60s, early 70s when it was built. All the senior guys always just called it the garage. It's just a garage. We're just putting trucks over there. Firehouse is over here. We're just putting trucks over there, right? So we joke about it. It's the garage every once in a while. The guys that have been around for a couple of years, we joke about it being a garage. It's just a garage, guys. So a couple of years ago, they were doing a Christmas party at headquarters every year, and I said, we never have people at our firehouse ever. So let's do after a Christmas party here. So in January, we always threw a January dinner on drill night. Instead of training that night, guys come to the firehouse, we do equipment checks, and then we go in and have chow, and we sit around a bunch of long tables. We all eat together, serve it at one time. Everybody eats together, and then I would get up and talk about different things about the department. And we talk about a lot of history things. We talk about memorable fires, kind of like what we do here at National Fire Radio, right? And so this kind of just has progressed, and it went from January. Then it was like, guys didn't have time in January, so we pushed it. Then it was like St. Patrick's Day. So it was the Monday after St. Patrick's Day. We would have corned beef and cabbage, and all the guys would come and hang out at the firehouse. So tomorrow night, now it's in April. April 1st, we pushed it back to April. So tomorrow night, we're doing this at the firehouse. But what's exciting for me is that we'll get a good turnout because I'm pushing it. Nice. And that's kind of my point, right? Like I think like guys like yourselves that are respected in the firehouse and have spent a lot of time there, when we can get behind something and promote it, I think it does wonders.
Definitely. You get a good turnout. The younger guys that look up to you, they'll come out.
Yeah.
The older guys will come out.
Yeah.
And it's a fun time for everybody.
It's the glue, right? Because like every firehouse needs that glue, right? You need a couple of those guys that and I know who your guys are that like that get the older guys and younger guys, and they're the glue in the middle that makes it work, right? You have those guys that can network between the older guys and the younger guys, and in the volunteer firehouse, I mean that's what you need. It's funny because we talk about how age doesn't play a difference in the firehouse, in the volunteer fire service, right? Doesn't. You're 70 years old or 16 years old, we treat everybody the same, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think is pretty interesting. And I've hit on that before, and just like my wife's friends, like outside of the firehouse, they're like, how do you have friends that are, 65 and 70 years old, and then you're talking to an 18-year-old kid like he's your, best friend? Right. I go, because that's what we do. Like, there's no age plays no distinction, So, I don't know. So, back on track a little bit, but I think, so I want to talk about, kind of segue just into like young officer roles. I think what's, in what's not plaguing, but a situation in the fire service now more than ever is we're putting guys in the line probably too early because we don't have the guys to fill the positions, right? I know my department right now, there's talk on the floor of lowering our standards so we can get somebody into a position.
We're going through the same thing.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Not that, like, I don't need to know your dirty laundry, but, like, just the whole concept of that, because I know where I stand on it.
Right.
And my mind was like, I was like, what? Like,
no,
wait a minute.
I agree. I'm big into training.
Yeah.
I always, I do what I can. I go to whatever training I can. And I'm for it. But it's harder because the requirements are harder, the training sessions are longer, and to keep up with everything is impossible. And the trade, you do that, you don't have the guys going back to the time commitments.
Right.
You don't have it, you lose it.
Yeah. What do you think, Joe?
I think that the state has implemented a lot of good requirements, but it makes it harder for the older members to keep up on those requirements. And think about the chiefs that we've had in the past. They couldn't run for chief again this year.
Yeah.
Chiefs that were out 10 years ago, they don't meet the state requirements to run for chief. They'd have to go back for hours and hours of incident command classes and additional training. Mm-hmm. Just, so the younger guys, they're able to go for all the training, empower them, encourage them, support them, set them, And then next thing you know, you look at who's eligible to run. They're the only ones that are eligible to run. Because the senior guys haven't kept up on their training. Now, is that our problem? Is that our fault that, we haven't kept up on that? Or is it, the young guys that are eager and have the time and, well, like you said about the wife. I mean, it all comes down to your support group. Right. I mean, I am blessed with an awesome wife and a great family and a great support team. But not everybody has that.
Right.
I mean, that makes it even harder.
I can't even tell you, and I'm not a proud thing to say, but like, other than company training and in-house training, I can't tell you the last time I went back to the academy for furthering my education.
Right, unless it was on your drill night.
Right. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, I haven't pursued anything further than, I probably haven't been back to the academy for a class other than like mandatory or company training.
Right.
I couldn't tell you. I would love to go back and finish out a couple different things that I started. It's just not in the cards.
No.
Right. It's not. And Joe, I think you bring up a good point though, because do you think that because of that, is that discouraging some of the older guys to maybe get back involved? Like, Tommy, you're retreading. I retreaded for a while. I was chief at a young age, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we were hurting for guys, and they said, would you be willing to run for captain of the house again at my house? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. But I didn't have the time to do the job. Right. So I didn't do it right. I didn't do it well. So like even if you get a guy like me to take that position, should I even be in the, like, I'm not doing the other end. If it's firematic, no problem, right? Not a problem. But the other stuff on the fire, like in the firehouse and the leadership position, and like if you don't have the time to do it and you're putting that guy into that position to fill the spot, what are we doing? We're promoting a culture of like, piss poor attitude, not enough time. We're showing the new generation that it's okay to do the job half-assed. Like and I have a hard time with that. That's why I stepped down. That's why I stepped down being a captain, because I was like, I don't have the time.
Right. And
I felt like I was just putting on a bad like ownership of it. I just wasn't doing a job well enough, But so the young officers, right? So Joe, you hit on a good point, and I think that I haven't really heard that talked about before on the senior guys having to continue their education, and where ICS has come and all this other stuff that now required of us in the state of New Jersey to be officers and so on. Yeah, guys with 10 years ago probably can't do it without going back and furthering their education on the more administrative stuff. I mean, it's tactical decision making on the command side, but we all know a lot of those command classes are a lot of just formalizing what we've all been doing for years and years, and it's, and so on. So, I think that's an interesting conversation. The other thing too, and you hit on it, Joe, is just the younger guys, they have that drive and desire, and I think you said promote and educate and support those younger guys to get those positions done. But I think what comes with that though, and maybe we could talk about it a little bit since you're in that position, right? Is that as a younger officer, do you see, and I'm sure you see it with other younger guys too, I see it so often that like sometimes that, you work hard for that position, you do that training, you get that seat, you get that position, and you're ready to go and you're excited. And then twofold. One, do you get discouraged because there's a lot of pushback or not the excitement that you think is behind the job because people aren't there to support you, right? Or be there for you to lead. And then two, do you find that some guys take it too far and that they, once they get that helmet and that shield, they think, like, here I am, I mean, let's talk about that one first. I mean, I think that's an interesting conversation. We've all seen it.
So, yeah, I mean, I have had, I've had the opportunity where I had some younger officers above me in the past where, it was really great because they're, energetic and they're in the flow with kind of the newer, the newer way of doing things. I mean, I don't have to worry about those considerations because, coming up, it was like, when I went through Fire 1, we had to take ICS 100, 200, 700 just for Fire 1.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I think definitely there are people that want those positions for the clout of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think I think that good officership is good officership through and through, whether it's for a good reason, a bad reason. I mean, you know, I know that I always kind of chuckle when I hear people say like, oh, well, you know, why are you in the fire service? And people's answer is, oh, because, you know, I like helping people. And it's like, yeah, it's nice to help people. It's a good thing to help people, but you know, there's always other reasons. You know, you like this, you like that, you like the excitement, you like the rush, whatever it is.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I
You're
don't,
absolutely right.
I don't really care if you work hard and you know what you're doing. I don't care why you're there. Even if you're, you know, one of those guys that's like, I just want the t-shirt and the namesake. Well, okay, if you're gonna put in for it, then it doesn't bother me. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of guys that do it because, you know, they want to write captain above their name on their you know, station jacket. But I don't think that it should matter why. I think it should matter, you know, what. Because like they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So you can set out wanting to be, you know, great officer for the guys, blah blah blah, and do a shit job. And I'm sorry, you can, you know, want to be an officer because you want a white helmet, a red helmet, whatever color you wear, and you know, you end up being great at it because you do the right things in the right moments.
Right. Good point. It's a very good point.
You know, I think that's outside age, outside experience. I think that, you know, that's just you know, human leadership.
You hit on a bunch of great things there, and I agree with you 100%. Like, leadership is it's lacking, and lack of a better word, but you know.
And why do you think it's lacking?
I don't know. I think it's. Go ahead. You got follow up to that, or go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that we miss in the fire service is teaching leaders to be leaders.
Beautiful. Go.
You know, we have the fire school training. We teach you how to put the wet stuff on the red stuff. We teach you how to vent the roof. We teach you how to get people out of cars. But we teach you how to talk to each other.
Yep.
I mean, you look at the age. Unless we're going to text each other or email each other, these young kids don't know how to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? You know, some of it we empower them to do it because now we text them instead of calling them. I mean, it drives me nuts. You know, like, why are we texting when we can pick up the phone and make a phone call? You know, or just have a conversation in person. But instead, we'll text. We'll, you know, do the group me stuff, the WhatsApp, and then we throw it out there and we expect that it's going to happen, and there's no follow up.
Right.
You know, we got a detail tonight. We got a fireworks detail. We're going to Mall or whatever. All right, you know, I need to get a crew. Well, Chief, I sent it out in the group. Nobody responded. Well, did you pick up the phone? Did you make some phone calls? Because I bet you I can get 5 guys. Right. Now, maybe it's because they want to do it for me. But pick up the phone. Like have a conversation. Are you promoting it after the fire calls?
Yeah, if you pick up the phone and do that, you'll
it's
get
amazing
10 guys.
how
If you
many,
send it
right.
out on the text, you'll get nobody.
Right. I mean, it's easy to hide.
I love this. Keep going, Joe. This is fantastic. Because you're absolutely right. But it's not.
But we don't teach them how to communicate. I think we lack that. Because 90% of the job, especially when you get higher up in the officer positions, is all personalities.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
One day you're a divorce lawyer. The next day you're, you know, a counselor. You know, you're a support team. You're teaching a kid how to do his math homework. I mean, fighting fires, at least for a lot of us, is not our bread and butter. I mean, it's personalities. It's dealing with stuff in the firehouse. Oh, he called me. Get over it.
Right.
Get over it. You know, we're called out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, you know, like, why do I have to deal with you not getting along with you? You know, like, if you don't like them, tell me you don't like them.
Right.
Figure it out.
Yeah, we're men.
Right.
Like, we'll figure it out.
You know, you don't have to go to fisticuffs, but work it out. Or just avoid each other. Yeah. You know, if you don't like them, just don't say hi to them.
Well,
just stay away from them.
Then the guys just don't show up at all because,
Yeah.
you know.
That's part of it too, right?
Yeah.
But we lack communication in the fire service.
And we don't teach leadership.
Right. Now, you go to corporate world and business, I mean, you're taking these classes. They're sending to these goofy things where they put you in groups of 6 and make you do projects together for team building. We don't do that in the fire service. We just don't. Oh, I haven't found it yet. And I've looked.
I'm with brother. This is fantastic because we're going down an avenue that I'm so happy we opened up here. I mean, you're absolutely right. And leadership is, we kind of take the fact that it's inherent that we can just all step into those positions when we feel we're ready. And you're right. You know, making those decisions, whether gut decision or based on experience on the fire ground, is one thing, right? Experience leads to leadership on the fire ground, being able to make the correct decisions, if you will. But you're right, that's not our everyday. The everyday is salesmanship 101, right? It's talking to people.
Right.
It's brokering relationships. It's encouraging, right? I mean, that's... So what do we do? What do we the Joe Vanderplatt School of Management? I mean, like, I like
I
this.
wish I had the answer.
Maybe National Fire Radio, Joe. We might have to roll out a management class or something. But this is, I mean, but I think you hit on something that's, and I've never really heard it put that way before. So thank you. That was cool. I dig that. I mean, what do you think? Like, yeah, I get it. And then Tommy, you like a lot of guys are afraid of conflict.
Right. If I know you're at the firehouse, I'm not coming around because I don't like you and I don't want to, you know. And then you don't see somebody for 2 years.
And it's sometimes it's not even the conflict. It's just some people are inapproachable. We know those people.
Right. Absolutely.
There's some people that just come up with broad shoulders and are inapproachable.
Right.
And it's nothing wrong about them.
Right.
But sometimes we gotta, especially when you're put into an officer position, you need to learn how to deal with those type of people.
Right.
Sometimes the hardest thing is just starting the conversation.
Right.
You know, you do something wrong at home, or your parents yell at you. Sometimes the hardest part is just starting the conversation. Once the conversation started, next thing you know, we're joking, we're laughing, we're getting over it, and it's behind us.
Yeah.
But if we don't have the conversation, it never gets out there. You know, like the junior officers, you see them come into the firehouse, and where are the old guys? And I say old guys that are older than the officers.
Right.
They're hanging out in the kitchen, they're hanging out at the bar, the beverage center, whatever you call it. You know, they're chit-chatting in the radio room. Who's doing the truck checks? Well, why aren't they?
Right.
If the junior officer would walk up to one of those senior guys and say, hey, you know what, I could really use your hand.
Right.
And maybe provide me a little bit of, leadership, because people will follow you. Get out there on the floor and just help me. They'll probably do it.
Yep.
But because they're never asked, then they start these bad habits, and then we empower the bad habits. And the next thing you know, the young kids are hanging out with the old guys because they want to hear the stories. Well, you can tell the stories out on the engine room floor.
While you're doing truck checks. Yeah, right. Joe, this is why you're here today, brother. I mean, I know, because like this is, it's exciting for me to hear you say these things because this is happening.
We make fun of the lawn shepherds. Well, why are they lawn shepherds? They're lawn shepherds because they're maybe not a type A attitude.
Right.
But they want God. They want to help. They want to do stuff. They just want somebody to ask them what to do. So, is it, we're making fun of the lawn shepherd, but instead, who actually went up to them and said, hey, you know what? You got the 6-foot hook. You look really good, but I could really use you inside. Why don't you come inside with me?
Right.
And 99% of them will go inside.
It's funny because people get threatened, and I know just coming up through the fire service, there were towns in our mutual aid that when they arrived, they went right to work because they know their job and they're confident in their skills and they're confident in their abilities.
I haven't seen anything wrong with that, do you, Tom?
And then, but go with me, right? You know what I'm talking about because here's the thing, right? Departments that aren't confident in their own abilities and skills, right, or their management feel that those towns are the ones that are coming in and taking over.
Right.
When in fact they're arriving and doing their job from the get-go because that's what they're supposed to be doing. Right. And so people are threatened. People just in life get threatened by of their own insecurities. And so if you have people that are coming in and working harder or doing a better job because they're, better versed or better trained or they have a culture that gets it, then you are going to feel threatened. And then that's going to create that animosity also, right? And I think it goes back to what you were saying too, Tommy. And it's funny, I joined the fire service because I love the fire service. Like I just love everything about it. And we do have these issues within that we try to fix or address and so on. But when we don't address them, guys disappear.
Right.
I could never disappear from the firehouse.
No.
Like I don't. For me, inherently, like I love the craft more than the nonsense pushing me away.
Right.
I mean, I've had my blowups with guys, but I'm also an A-type personality where I'll address it.
Right.
Up front. So when guys disappear, it blows my mind, right?
I mean,
but does anybody ever go after those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I have on occasion.
Sometimes we don't, and then we lose.
Oh, I agree. Most times we don't.
Yeah.
Where it can be fixed by a simple conversation, like you said.
Right.
But in fact, we don't. I've seen departments where they make SOG changes and bylaw changes because of one guy doing one thing instead of addressing the one guy and his problem. We'll change the whole way we do something because we're afraid to address one guy.
Yeah, no, you can't do that.
Excuse my language. It's fucking insane. Like, think about it. That's insanity. But that's how far we go at times because we don't like conflict. You know? I mean, and every firehouse has those cancers, and every firehouse, and when I say cancers, I'm talking about the people that love to just bring down the firehouse. Love to bring down the people. And we have that, whether it's a career or volunteer, there's always those cancerous people that it just spreads. You know, they can get in, they're the niche, they just get in there and they get people to turn on their own companies and organizations. And, some of the proudest things that I did when I was an officer was I got rid of the cancers.
Right.
I got rid of them because they are exactly that. And they got to go. And
I think you need to educate the new members when they come in, and we hit on this in our meetings with the new membership, is you got to create your own opinions of people. You know, if you listen, that just because you don't like Jeremy or whatever doesn't mean that I don't have to like him.
Right.
Create your own opinions. Give everybody a chance. And I think sometimes these young kids are like sponges, and they want to hang out with the cool kids, but just because the cool kids doesn't like one of the other guys, then next thing you know they're not liking them, and it's like you got to come up with your own opinions. Everybody deserves a chance at least once.
Agreed. Absolutely, I agree. I absolutely agree. So God, so many things right here. So the management, communication. Let's talk about communication. How do we do it well? Or what don't we do well? I mean, Joe, you kind of hit on it. We don't communicate verbally well anymore. I don't think we do. And I think, I think part of the volunteer fire service is we are often our own worst enemy, right? We're creating a culture of, I think the fire service works best when it's the old school, roll up your sleeves, get dirty and work hard. And when we have fires and guys are training and we're doing fires, things are good. Things go well, right? All the other nonsense gets put to the back burner, right? But then we get a little slow period, and that's when things start to pop up here and there, right? I mean, I just think that is typically how the volunteer fire service works, and it's probably the same in a career house too. Only assuming I'm not a career fireman. If Rob was here, he could probably hit on it. But my point is this, is that how do we, going forward, like when we talk about communication, how do we, Joe, maybe some ideas, you mentioned a new membership meeting. Do you have a new membership meeting, like when you bring in new members?
When a new member joins, we sit down, specifically the juniors, and even the new members, we at least sit down with them. The juniors, we sit down and go over all the bylaws with their parents, lay everything out right up front.
Expectations,
right.
Requirements,
go over everything. Mm-hmm. And they're the most impressionable, and we really lay down, the groundwork. We support the parents, and we support school. If a parent wants their son suspended because they're slacking off or mouthing off at the dinner table,
done.
We support the parents 100%.
I think doing that too, you are laying the groundwork up front of the expectations of that kid, and so that they know going into it what's expected of them, which is hugely important.
Right.
I think a lot of times we don't talk about that.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Tommy? You guys do anything for new members?
We used to. You used to sit down. You got a packet, like you said, with the bylaws.
I'm with you.
Do everything. Last department I was with in Orangeburg, you were assigned a training officer. We're starting to get back into that again in Mawa. We're going to start making up packets, hand it out.
Yeah.
Maybe, we'll be assigned together as for your first year or 6 months, or, if you have questions, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But we're looking to get that rolling again and
at least empower the new member with a sponsor. Somebody to go to. You have a question, somebody does something, don't ever hesitate to go to your sponsor, go to an officer and ask a question. Is that right? Were we really supposed to do that?
Right.
We're all about, sit down and shut up and don't be seen. But I don't know if that's necessarily the right answer either. They should definitely, observe. But if they have questions, I thought that the thing you had your guys the other day, having the young guys teach.
Yeah.
The guys come through fire school, and I had it. We did a drill, and I was watching one of my one of my officers, going over fog vent, and I'm like, something's not right. And I grabbed two of the juniors that just went through fire school. I'm like, why don't you show us how to do fog vent? And it was completely different.
I love it.
But you know what? It's fresh in their heads.
Yeah.
Have them teach us.
Yeah.
Teach us the new ways. Bring up some of the new tactics.
Which I think is cool too, because you're empowering these younger kids and putting them on the bigger stage in front of their comrades, if you will, and say, "Hey guys, man, we believe in you and trust in you enough to put you here now. So show us." Right. Sid, what do you guys do? Like new membership or mentorships or?
I have been in a couple of variable situations when it comes to that. I've been in departments where I have never seen a copy of the bylaws. I have never seen a copy of the SOPs, and I absolutely agree that giving people a structure and an expectation and explaining things is really the way to go. Because even personally, it's difficult when you go into a meeting room and you sit down in a seat and you only get told afterwards, like, hey, you can't sit there. Hey, you're supposed to stand over here. And it's like, well, if you're going to, and I get that sometimes you got to, set somebody up and let them make their own mistakes. But, I've seen people come through the door in places, and maybe the reason that they leave and go away is because it wasn't explained, hey, just go talk it out. Or, hey, there are certain expectations. There is a certain attitude. I was lucky that coming up there were guys around that I consider squared away. They say, hey, you go and you go to another guy's house and you bring donuts, you bring cannolis, you bring something. Mm-hmm. You don't go empty-handed. But a lot of people are not. Yeah,
not that I need that. No. The gesture is amazing. My kids will love them.
But I have a Proby right now who's as green as it gets, and but he's super into it and super excited for it. But a lot of times I see that someone will say, hey, go clean the bathroom, and it hasn't been explained that this is your position and this is your ticket to ride, this is how you get into it. To him it feels like, oh, if I was gonna get told to do chores, I'll stay home at that point.
What
I mean?
Ticket to ride. I like that a lot.
But that's the thing is that, I grew up with people who told me from the get-go, you better have thick skin, you better pay your way, no one's going to give you anything, you want something, you have to go and get it. But I've also been places where you come through the door and, you get a pumpkin patch shield and you get stuck on the back of the truck, and then people are yelling at you that oh, well, you don't know how this works, you don't know where that is, and it's like, but
it all goes back to communication and the personalities between the guys, and maybe if you were assigned a mentor, I was when I first joined at 16, and I'm still the same way. If I'm around, I'm there, call, drill, whatever it may be. But now you don't do that. Guys join, and guys expect everybody to know what their role is, and if you're not explaining that role, if you're not given any information.
And listen, I'm guilty of it. I find myself sometimes short with guys, and then I do this system analysis in my brain after I say something. I'm like I should have taken an extra 30 seconds and said to this kid hold on, slow down, but instead you snap. You're like, hey, what the we're all guilty of it. Right? And what I've been trying to do, and I'll be honest, in the last year with this whole National Fire Radio platform, the promotion of brotherhood and culture that we talk about in the tradition really has stepped up. I tried to step up my personal game in the Firehouse, because I'm a firm believer that every piece of content we put out and everything we do that represents our brand, National Fire Radio, my actions have to speak to that. And I was kind of talking to Sid about that before you guys got here this morning, and just talking about a couple different things. And I'm, call it what you want. We're kind of, people are watching us and they see us. And so my game has to be authentic. And I'm the first guy to say, I'm not doing the best at this. I just don't have the time to do what I used to do or whatever. But when I am at the Firehouse, I'm trying to do and put in more value than I've ever put in before in the things that I can do and the time that I do have there. And so I am finding myself, trying to take that extra few minutes and have that conversation, or, pat the guy in the back and tell him he did a great job on that fire or whatever, just a little more than what I probably used to do, which I think just comes with age and experience too. And that's kind of what I wanted to maybe segue into a little bit. Just a little bit backstory on me. I became chief of my department at 27 years old. And I was assistant chief from 24 to 26. And then, so I was assistant chief for 3 years at 24 to 26 years old. And then at 27, I became chief. I had a baby. I didn't. My wife did. And then and then she was pregnant again because I'm. What can I tell you? So my two youngest are 14 months apart, and so for me, I stepped down after 1 year as chief. I had another 2 years to go. I would have been chief from 27 to 29, and I stepped down. And it's funny. So when I was a chief at that age, an assistant chief, totally different demeanor than I am now. I was a lot more opinionated, spoke my mind a lot. A lot of guys didn't care for me, thought I was pushy and, bully or whatever. Could have been, but I also have the A-type personality that it's my way unless you could tell me you could do it better and show me, prove to me that your way's better, I'm in. If you can prove to me your way's better, do it. But until then, it's my way, right? That's just who I am, and I'm still very much that way. But I will listen more than I ever did. But it was funny because this has always stuck with me. When I retreaded a couple years later, I took a couple years off, and then they asked me to come back in and be a captain. And so I did. And I sat down at the first officers meeting, and it was this talking around a table. And I don't know how your officers meetings goes, but for some reason in my department, they're 5-hour meetings. And they blow they go for hours. And we always just go in circles, and nothing ever gets accomplished. And so so finally I'm guys, we can't do this. We're going around in circles, and this should be an hour and a half. We're out of here, right? And it just goes on and on and on. But the point was, something came up in the meeting, and I was whoa. I'm let's sit back and think about this for a minute, right? And then every kid in that meeting, all the young officers just looked at me, and they go, when you were chief, you would have said this, and we would have just plowed right through it. And I'm yeah, but I was 27. I don't have the experiences that I have now. A little bit more, not that I'm mature, but a little more maturity as you get older, right? So where I'm going with this when we talk about volunteer officer positions and so on, even on the career side, just people skills. When you get more maturity in life and you have more experiences, it shapes and crafts the type of fireman you become and the type of officer you are. And I kind of just wanted to hit on that. Maybe you guys could just chime in a little bit about your not personal experiences, but just what you know of as as you get older. Are you a different officer today than you were when you first started? Do you?
100%.
Yeah. Tommy, you?
Definitely.
And I think it comes down to just the maturity and time, right? The percolation, if you will, of over time, you've just gotten a little more under your belt and people skills and so on. Sid, I have to think for you, 22, man, you're in a tough spot. I think you are. Not that you...
Yeah.
And I don't mean that derogatory at all.
No,
what I'm saying is,
I agree.
I think being a 22-year-old officer is very difficult. I think it can be, right? I did it. I remember I remember making decisions, and there's guys that are 20 years your senior looking at you I don't know. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
No, I remember when there first started to be rumblings that they were going to ask me to do it, I had hit up Bobby Eckert because I heard him on here.
Right.
And I hit him up and we talked about it a bit, and he was like, look, you're going to find that going to fires is not the difficult part of officership, because going into it, my mind was oh, well, where am I going to have him stand, and where am I going to try and send this guy, and, this and that and the other thing. And, it's true that I'm facing a lot more challenging things when it comes to, like you said, how do you communicate with, your senior officership, when they disagree with what you're doing? How do you, plan
just the senior
that
guy? Doesn't even have to be a senior officer.
Right.
Just how do you address the senior guy?
Right. How do I address guys that are, that are not officers, that are griping to me about things that other people are doing? And, now I have to deal with that, 2 weeks ago, we could sit around and, bitch and complain about this person and the way they ran that scene and this and that. And now in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'm really not supposed to be, I'm not supposed to be talking down to people that are not, because this is just the way that I was told, is the captain is not supposed to go gripe to a back step guy about what's happening higher up the line. And so, I don't know. I find that the challenges, especially at this age, much more are that how do you talk to guys in their 40s that have been doing it forever and go like, hey, listen, I get that it comes from somewhere and I have the utmost respect for it, but like the guys below me are saying, and like you are saying, like, you haven't proved it in a long time. I've been here, not nearly as long as, the fly on your ass, but I haven't seen you throw a ladder. I haven't seen you stretch lines. You're telling me, oh, don't worry about this, don't worry about that. I'm hearing other things from outside. And so it's a lot to, it's a lot to stay
juggle,
balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get the senior guys to drill?
Right.
Keep going.
How do I get anybody to drill? I
think leading by example. As simple as packing the hose on the back of the engine after a fall.
Right.
Everybody should be in a line. I don't care if there's 100 guys. Everybody touches the piece of hose.
And you guys, Joe, you guys are doing it well, man. I just saw a picture the other day from a job from you guys, and you guys. I mean, those are those traditional New York City pictures, right? Where they're racking hose and they have 47 guys in line. You know what I mean?
It's simple things like that.
Yeah. And I'm glad that
cleaning the kitchen. Everybody should be in there. Mm-hmm. Meals over. Before you go home, you got to go home early because your wife or your kids are sick. Do something.
Take a garbage out.
Take a garbage can out.
Right.
I get that you can't be there to the end of the night because sometimes our nights go pretty late.
Yeah.
But everybody should be chipping in.
I think part of that though too is like I love getting the pushback sometimes when I'm like, hey guys, jump in, like, and then you get I've been 30 years, let the young kids do it, and I'm like, let the other guys do it, let the other guys go to the calls at night, and I'm like, what other guys?
Right.
Like what other guys? Like that's one of my favorite conversations to have.
We're it.
I go, sorry, man. I know when you were a 10-year guy in this Firehouse 40 years ago, there was 25 guys after you that came in that would do the garbages and clean the kitchen and do all the menial tasks, right? And go to calls and so on. And now that you have 25, 30, 40 years in, I know you want to slow down, and I respect that. You put in your time. But, like, here's the deal. I'm a 24-year guy. I should be able to have that same mentality or starting to. But if I don't show up, that engine might not get out at night. Right? And when you start getting that mentality of like, let the other guys do it, I'm like, what other guys? Like, let's have this. Let's have a realistic conversation here for a minute. What other guys? Right. I mean, the senior guys in some of these volunteer firehouses are doing more than the junior guys because they have to.
Right.
And they're kind of tailored and dialed in to do that because they've been instilled the right values from day one. My father still gets up at 76 years old, gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning and goes to calls. He goes, and my department goes out over 600 times a year, strictly fire. We're not a very busy volunteer department. We're busy enough to keep us running. But my father and a couple other older guys are sometimes the only guys that are handling some of these calls. Right. And then you go, what other guys? Like, yeah, should there be some younger guys out? Yeah, but they must have, they had to sleep because they got to work tomorrow. Right? I mean, there's always that conversation too, which is a fun conversation to have with people. But
they stay out to 2 o'clock in the morning at the bar.
Yeah.
Go to bed a little bit earlier,
Yeah, I mean, it's all of that. But I love that, that mentality, and you guys are absolutely right. Like, everybody should be hands on deck. And when we start getting into the position of, saying, like, let the new guy do it. Or, if you're not leading, like, if a guy like myself takes the garbage out, and then I'm like, hey, Joe, give me a hand. Like, that's huge, right? That's a huge way to instill the right value into that kid so that down the road, before I even have to ask him to give me a hand, he's already like, hey, Jay, I got the garbages, no worry. I think that's part of that leadership and that communication, Joe, that you hit on. And I think a lot of the detriment in our own firehouses and companies these days is a direct result of a lack or no communication. I think a lot of it has to do with that, right? And then having that disconnect between young and old because there's a lack of communication and understanding between the two. And if you lack those guys that have that glue, that can hold, I could talk to the 90-year-old guy in the corner that still has voting rights in the volunteer house, right? And you're like, come on, like, hey, Jack, I need your help on this. Like, you know, and you can kind of do that, and then you talk to the younger kid, and you can, it takes a special type of, I don't know, personality, and I think we're starting to lack personalities. I think that's something else, right? So, where are we gonna go? We got a little bit of time left. I mean, we've been crapping all over it. Let's kind of talk about some personal, like some good stuff, right? Like, so I mean, I know for me how fulfilling it is for me and my family, and how good the volunteer fire service is. There's going to be a lot of naysayers out there. You know, volunteers suck. Got to go pay. Like, I get all that. I don't care. It's white noise to me, and so on. And we get a lot of pushback sometimes on our own channel. I don't care. Like, when we talk about the job on National Fire Radio, we talk about being a fireman. I don't care if career or volunteer. If you don't like that, feel free to unsubscribe or don't follow us. But that's what we talk about, right? So it's a love for the job. I think, you know, what the positives that come out of it, right? I mean, I get excited when I see the newer generation step up. I get excited when those 22-year-old kids want to be an officer, but then they do the job. That's exciting for me. You know? I mean, what I mean, there's got to be some stuff here that, like, it's not just crap. I mean, you're 22, man. You got a long go ahead of you, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about it. Like, you want to get hired. I mean, you're hoping to go in that direction, and you know, a lot of our guys do. Joe hit on it before, and I'm proud to say in my hometown, we put out guys every year now. We're putting guys out into career departments. We have 3 more going out in the next like 60 days. And I mean, I can't even tell you how many career guys, like we've put out a ton of career guys, you know? And so that to me, I think is a feather in our cap just for the culture, right? You're a 22-year-old kid, you're impressionable. I mean, you're very well spoken, Sid. No, but I mean this because I think you, and that's why I was excited to have you here today, is you and I have had conversations before, only met once or twice. But I think just hearing the way you talk and how articulate you are about the fire service and so on through our conversations is great, because I think more younger officers need to maybe sit back and listen to you a little bit more about just your experiences and how well you speak, because a lot of guys don't and can't convey their message. And you can, and I think that's great, and it's a huge plus to who you are, and I think you're going to go very far. I think what's exciting for me is guys like you. And guys, I mean, these guys too, of course, but we grew up in this, right? I mean, like, we see each other on the fire ground, and, you know, we shake hands, give a hug or whatever, and we bullshit for a few minutes, but, you know, it's exciting to see these younger guys. I mean, I know you guys and Joe's department has a very strong truck culture. Their truck goes all over. They have a very strong, disciplined truck culture in their department. And so to see their younger guys understand that hustle is so cool.
Awesome.
Like, I love, right, Tommy? Like, it's cool to see it. You, Joe, you guys are doing some really good things there and instilling that type of culture into your guys, that when it's time to go to work, it's time to go to work, and there's no nonsense, you know? Tommy's department's a big department, and, you know, you guys got a lot going on. You have tons of different disciplines. Heavy rescue, hazmat, water. I mean, these guys do all the disciplines, so, like, they're always hustling too, man, and they run. I mean, they do a lot of calls. But, you know, it's just, those are the exciting things for me, to see the next generation. I hate the millennial talk. I hate all that. I think it just comes down to, you know, and I've talked about it before on this platform, where we talk about, like, the next generation's always shittier than the generation that's there, right?
But we allow that.
What?
We allow that. We empower that.
You're right, but it's been happening since, like, World War II, right? Like, the greatest generation, and then every generation after them is just sucky and shittier and shittier and shittier, right? But, like, I still think there's so much good, and I think it's easier. I think it's a cop-out. I think now that we start putting titles to things and we're calling them millennials, like, what, I don't know what I was. Like, what was our age group? Right. I mean, I don't think we had a term. Like,
Or it wasn't a cool term, I don't know.
True. But we didn't wear tight pants and everything. Well,
Right.
that's all that story. So, but my point is this, right? Like, I think the fire service likes to find terms or strategies and stick to them and throw it to the wall like it's good for everything. And I think, you know, when it comes to, like, millennials and the new generation of firemen and how they're just not as good, I call bullshit. I throw the flag. I mean, I call bullshit. I think it's a cop-out. I think it goes back to managing, leading, teaching. I see the kids today are just as excited and willing to absorb what they learn But I also know that because everything's instant today, they need answers. Whereas like you and I and Tommy, like the three of us, like we didn't always get answers. We were just told, that's the way it is. You'll see why, or you'll figure it out. And now it's, 22-year-old guys are more like, well, why? And there's some animosity from the senior guys that are like, just shut up. Like, don't ask me why. But if the senior guy had a good explanation of why, and he explained it, you move on.
Right.
A lot of times, nobody's got the explanation of exactly why, so it's just easier to say it and then run away from it. Right? Mm-hmm. Thoughts? I mean...
Oh, I think you're right. I mean,
yeah.
It's, we didn't have Google when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have YouTube. It was Atari and...
Yeah. They said now, like, bar conversations, bar betting is terrible now. Because you go out, and a bunch of guys are drinking beers, and you start talking about, like, the 88 World Series, and trivia question comes up, and you're like, no, it was so-and-so, no, it was so-and-so. Yeah, you know what? Hey, Siri. Who won the 1988 World Series?
The Dodgers won the World Series 4-1 over the Athletics.
Guess what?
They won.
Game over. Right?
Yeah.
Game over. My daughter's doing homework. And I'm like, how do I do this math problem? She's like, sixth grade math. Sixth grade math. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not dumb. Sixth grade math. And I go, holy crap. And what do? I go to YouTube. I get the answer. I could sit there for 10 minutes and try to figure it out. Right. You're lucky your wife's like an accountant, so you're good, Joe. But me, not so much, right? And I sit there and I go, man, I'm like, I
did the same thing last week. I'm second guessing myself.
Yep.
Like, looking at it, am I an idiot?
Yep. I get it. And it's incredible. I look, my 11-year-old Lily is the smartest freaking kid that I know, and she makes me look like an idiot. Like, when it comes to, like, science and animals and things like that, that's her thing. Yeah. But she watches and studies YouTube and Google. And, like, to have that at their fingertips now is incredible. But that is why now I have to explain everything to my kids. Where when I was growing up, it was just the way it was.
That's right.
And now it's like, hey, Lily, you need to do this. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because I want you to. Yeah, but why? Like, can I do it, like... I'm like, no, like, just, damn it, I get so annoyed. I'm like, man, why can't we just go back to, like, when I didn't have to explain everything? But the same thing translates to the Firehouse, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. They're all asking why.
Yeah.
And you better be able to provide an answer.
Well, and that's it, right? So now we have to step up our game. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to look in that mirror and say, shit, these kids are pressing us to know more than to know what we think we know. Right? Like, you have your whole SOGs, right? And you thumb through them as a department, and Joe, you've been out for 24 years, 25 years. You know them pretty good inside and out. You're an assistant chief. You're supposed to, right? Me too. You too. And then a young kid asks you a question about him, and you're like, yep. And you look at it, and you're like, nope. You know what I mean? Like, it's that, to me, it's like, that means that we have an obligation to step up our game. And then that comes back to that whole conversation of how do we do that, how, and so on. And so
when you look at some of those SOGs, and even some of the practices that are within the Firehouse, they were started years ago. Have we ever gone back and looked at them and said, you know what, is this work today? Why are we doing X, Y, and Z when it's A, B, and C?
Right.
And the young kids challenge us on that, and they should continue to challenge us on that, because maybe what we're doing isn't necessarily the right thing.
I love that, Joe. I think you just put it very well summed up, that we got to be on our game. If we're going to lead the next generation and we're going to complain about the next generation, then we got to have our game squared away. And I think that's what some of the threat is. I think that's where some of the disconnect comes, because maybe guys are shying away from telling those stories or sharing their experiences because the next generation is a little bit smarter, maybe, in going, well, why? And then you have a hard time conveying your message or explaining why. And I think that's something to take away from this. And I think Sid, I keep coming back to you because you are the young guy in the room, but I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that before the ease of having the exact answer at your fingertip, there was a lot of stake that was put into credibility, that was put into time in, that you just trusted people's answers because, hey, he's been here, 20, 25 years, must know what's going on. And now, guys are used to being able to see everything in context and see the bigger picture. And personally, I feel like maybe the older guys are worried about having to admit that there isn't a great explanation, or there isn't a reason why, or it was wrong, it is wrong now, or it's right, or it's just one method. And the kid that I was talking about earlier, who's super green, I caught a lot of flack because we had this whole slew of vacants that the borough was tearing down. So I'm taking him out. Hey, here's a parapet wall. Let's force a door and go look inside this one. And it's not because he's anywhere near being the force team coming off the truck. But if I don't explain to him in the bigger picture, if I'm not willing to him be like, hey, what's this? And we go, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Let's find out. I can't just go, well, because I'm the captain and that's why. It's same with parents. When I was growing up, it was because I'm your father and I told you so. That's why. Yeah. You don't need another reason.
Right.
You have a roof over your head and you should be glad that you should be glad of that. But now I feel like even myself, I'm excited. I want it all. I want to be the best. I want to work with the best. I want to, like a moth to flame. And I think that there's a lot of other people like that. And I think people are worried that, that they won't be able to explain it. And I don't think it should matter, because I don't think that you should have an issue even as a boss saying, actually, I don't know why. Actually, we had a fire like 2 weeks ago on Friday, and it was myself and another for search of one side of a duplex, and did the first floor, and then went to the basement before the second. And afterwards, we were out to dinner later, and I grabbed the guy I was with, and I said, you know what, that I should have thought to do the second floor before the basement. Next time we'll do it that way. But now he gets where I'm coming from, and I get where he's coming from, and I don't know. I feel like maybe people with 25 years kind of don't feel so comfortable not knowing everything, not having every answer, and so animosity develops when people start asking why, because they don't want to address the fact that maybe there isn't a great reason, or maybe it does need to be addressed again. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like I feel like it is much more a culture now of like, well, and anybody can tell you war stories, anybody can show you a picture, anybody can say that they were there, but people nowadays, they want to go out and do it and see it and ask you, and and I, even at times, I'm struggling to keep up, because the guy behind me, it's like in 6 weeks he knows everything now that it took me my first year to figure out.
Yeah.
And how am I going to explain to him that, like, oh yeah, well, why is this like this? Well, I don't really know, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that now we address something that we should be addressing. We should know why. We should ask ourselves, is there a better way to do these things?
But I think too, we have to be careful. Always giving answers gives people a false sense that they know. So that if you ask why, and the officer or a senior man or a chief or whatever in life, just in life, somebody tells you, we have to be careful that the younger kid that gets the answer still doesn't know. We tell them why, but until you experience the why, there's that disconnect, right? Do you follow? Like, maybe I'm not explaining it correctly, but I feel like I'm a little disconnected of how I'm explaining it, but it still very much in the fire service, we give people a lot of answers. Now guys can go on YouTube and they can Google whatever they want and they can get answers. But are they the right answers? Are they the answers that might get them in trouble? Right? Like, are our industry is based on taking risk, right? It's a calculated risk assumption of every time we go out the door, we balance risk versus reward, right? And so it's easy, black and white, to give Sid an answer. Hey Sid, you go to the second floor on your search because that's where the living quarters are. However, if that's what's taught, but then you realize going in after you force entry that it's a squatter's house, the staircase is shot, you might have to get to the basement because there's a probability they might be below, you know, the floor below and not the floor above because the stairs are going or something. Like, when we give clear and precise answers and you don't have any street smarts or know-how or experience or knowledge to back up the answer that you were given, that's where I think we can have some disconnect. I think we can get into trouble that way too. And maybe that's why sometimes when we don't have to give an answer right away, you following me? Like, does that make sense?
That's what some of the younger, they want answers. Everything's cut and dry, clear to them.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the fire service is not cut and dry.
Exactly.
There's never a fire the same, never an accident the same.
Right.
You need to adapt and overcome. You need a plan B, because plan A may not work.
Correct.
And if you don't have a plan B and plan A fails, now what happens? People die. You know, like, you always got to be thinking forward.
I agree, and I think that's where I was kind of just leaning with that, is that, you know, just having the answer doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do that job and make the right decision.
Right, because it may not be the right answer for that job.
Exactly.
Even though it worked yesterday, something could be different.
Right. And I think that's a very good point, Joe. I really do.
I mean, you know, some of this, you know, this studies and these science things, I think it's all great stuff that's coming out. I think we need to apply it to what's applicable for our job and our area and everything else.
Right.
You know, is it for every fire? Absolutely not. But is there some valid information that's coming out, and we just need to apply it instead of motherfucking it? Mm-hmm. I think is a valid, you know.
You and I had a great
conversation. It drives me nuts when people have trashed the, you know, like there's a lot of money and a lot of time going into some of these studies.
Right.
You know, I don't want to hit it from the yard. I want to go inside and put the fire out. But I think there's some things that we should be taken away from and learning from them. You know, these studies weren't available when we were growing up.
You and I had a conversation the other night. We were talking about the whole clean cab concept and so on, and I'm not here to debate it. It's not what the point of this is. But Joe and one of his buddies, they went down to a quick couple-day seminar on just the carcinogens and cancer awareness and turnout gear and all that stuff. And some of the stuff that Joe came back with, and we were just talking in a 10-minute sidebar conversation the other night, really got me thinking, right?
Right.
Like, and I sat there and I go, man, as much as like, you know, clean cabs don't make grabs and all that shit, right? You start thinking and talking about the different things, and like, I'll leave you with this. The thing that stuck with me on this was when we were talking about exhaust systems in a firehouse. And when you're getting dressed in a volunteer firehouse and that rig's running, that exhaust is up your balls. It's right at ball level. How many testicular cancer jobs are coming out of these firehouses?
Yeah.
And is it related to the exhaust blowing out in your balls every time you're getting dressed? Think about that.
Right.
Like, I never even, like, it's not even a thought, right? It's just exhaust. Like, you know, we're worried about the CO in the building. We're not worried about actually, you know, the unclean burn and the particulates that could potentially absorb through your clothes and get, and so on. So Joe, like, he blew my mind with a couple other things he told me too, just on it. And I'm still not like sold on the whole clean cab concept, but there is something there. It's gotta be, you gotta have open conversation and open mind, because as science develops, like now more than ever, our society is so progressive. You know, just look at technology in the last 10 years. Like never before. The cotton gin was the biggest invention for 40 years, right? And now it's like, you know, you look at technology now and where we're headed and how things change so fast, you know? So, you know, it's just progressing so fast. So the fire service has to progress with it. We can't turn a blind eye to that stuff. You're absolutely right.
And I think as young officers, I think they need to continue to educate themselves. You know, I think you see a lot of young officers, they go through Fire One, they're given almost every class they need to be an officer all the way up through battalion.
Right.
They don't have to go back. We have to go back because we weren't given that in Fire One.
Right.
But do they continue their education? Do they go to FDIC? Do they go to Fire Expo? Do they go to Bolt? You know, like, are they going to these classes?
Yeah. And there's so many.
I know the department's empowering. They shouldn't be intimidated that they may change from the norm of where their department's going. I think they need to be empowered by the, you know, the senior guys and their departments. And if it's funding, you know, there's grants out there to get, you know, to get classes. And if you can't make it to FDIC, almost every lecture is out on YouTube.
Right.
Within like 60 days after.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there, but I think the networking that comes out of the trade shows
Yeah, hit on that. That's I was going to
is
hit that.
amazing. You know, the networking coming out of your group here. You know, getting to meet people. You mentioned you had a guy that was on Jeremy's show a couple weeks ago, and then you called him up for a question. We're all struggling with the same issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the same circus, different clowns.
Right.
And it's all, I mean, when we were out in North Carolina at the Firehouse, I mean, we were talking to guys from Sioux Falls and Canada, and we're all complaining about the same things. we all have the same struggles.
Yeah.
You know, we all have a common bond. We're here. We're here for a reason, because we have a common bond, and we're all on the same page. But, you know,
I agree.
don't know.
And I like to think that in what we're
But having
trying-
the conversation, I think, is the beginning of trying
That's
to
it.
fix it.
That's it. I think, and that's why I wanted to do this roundtable, and I think this is a great way to just wrap this up, is that's why I wanted to get this roundtable together, and I want to do more of these Sunday morning roundtables here in our studio, because what we just talked about for the last hour and 17 minutes, right? Joe wants me to keep it short, so I got to wrap this up. But what we did in the last hour and 17 minutes is very much that. We opened conversation that we didn't solve anything here. But I think putting it out there in National Fire Radio, having a following and a platform that we can put content out, to me, I take home every day, I take that home, and I'm proud of what we're putting out because we're facilitating conversations. And we're not giving answers, but we're letting guys know, like, I didn't know Sid before we started doing National Fire Radio, and now I've made a good friend. And we have the ability to know what's happening in Homestead, PA. And I talk to kids all over the country. And I say kids, I'm talking to guys on the job too, 20 years, 25 years. Major cities to the smallest towns. I don't know if we're making an impact, but what I do know is that we're opening conversation and having people talk. And being able to do that on our platform, I'm very proud of that. And so these Sunday morning roundtables, I think are great because we hit on a bunch of topics today that nothing got solved. But the fact is some kid in Iowa or a guy on the job in Seattle or wherever has the ability to understand that they're not going through it alone, that this is a fire service-wide issue. And so, maybe collectively opening up the conversation at least might facilitate a little bit of change here or there and maybe try to build this thing to keep the fire service going in the right direction. And so with that, guys, I thank you so much for joining me tonight. Usually we film at night. This morning, drinking coffee, not beer. But I thank you. I mean, Joe Vanderplatte from the Whitehall Fire Department in New Jersey, Tommy Loretto out of Mawa, and Sid, thank you, brother, from Homestead, PA,
pleasure.
man. This has been fantastic. We're going to be getting out by Homestead. You guys should join us for that trip. That'll be good. We're going to come out and check out the department, see what you guys are doing out there. We've been talking about doing that for a while.
Yeah.
So we're excited to do that. And to our followers and listeners, and thank you. I can't thank everyone enough for the support and the ability to give us the ability to give you content based on the fire service and what we think needs to be said and heard. So with that, thank you, Sunday Morning Roundtable from National Fire Radio Studios. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And be sure to listen, like, share, and promote. It helps us in the view and the feed. And give us a review, whether it's a 1-star, we're terrible, or a 5-star, we're great. I'd appreciate anything, any feedback. So, guys, thank you. From Jeremy from the studio, thanks. Have a good day.